Responsible scholarship involves taking a look at the data that's available and then coming to conclusions based on that data, trying to make the best sense out of the data that's available. One good example of this is physics, science. In the beginning of the 19th century, there were some experiments done, and based on the data, we could tell that light was a wave. However, towards the end of the 19th century, there was some data that suggested that it wasn't a wave, and so a new theory was born that perhaps light was also a particle and traveled in these packets, as they called them. And so more experiments were done, and it was found that light is also a particle. There were two sets of data that suggested that it was a wave and data that suggested it was a particle. Some scientists were very hesitant to accept light as both a wave and a particle, and all scientists agree that they really don't understand this. This is the way it is with most of quantum physics. It's based on the data, it's the best way to make sense of the data, but we can't necessarily understand it. But scientists accept it because that's what the data suggests. So when it comes to Jesus and the nature of God, those who accept the authority of the Bible take a look at what the data suggests about God and Jesus. And here's what we get. I simply don't have time to go through all of the references that I list here, but if you would like to pause the video and take a look at them, feel free. This data, when put together, suggests only one thing, that there is only one God. Here is another set of data that we get from the scriptures, this time only from the gospel accounts. There's more on this point, but I picked out what I could in a short time based only on the gospels. The conclusion about this data is that Jesus and the Father are separate. And now here is another set of data that leads us to yet another conclusion. All of these data suggest that Jesus is God. There's no other way around the data. Here is another set of data. And these data suggest that Jesus himself is also fully human. And here are more data that we have to deal with when trying to understand the nature of God and Jesus himself. And based on these data, we conclude that the Holy Spirit is God, but is separate from the Father and the Son. So here are the conclusions that we have to derive from the data available to us. First of all, there is only one God. Secondly, Jesus and the Father are separate. However, Jesus is God. Jesus is also fully human, and the Holy Spirit is God, but a separate person from the Father and the Son. One of the important things to recognize here is that none of these contradict the other. They can all be true, and it just ends up in a way that we simply can't understand, much the same way that quantum physics ends up as all true, but in a way that we cannot understand. So what we do now is we put together a theory that explains all of these conclusions, keeps them all true at the same time. And this is the resulting doctrine. First of all, there is one God. Secondly, in God there are three persons, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. The Son is a divine person with a divine nature who assumed a human nature. And lastly, Jesus is one person with two complete natures. To reject any of these doctrines is to do injustice to one of the conclusions we had come to beforehand, and also to ignore much of the data that's available to us about the nature of God and the nature of Jesus himself. So if we want to do justice to the data of Revelation, then these are the conclusions that we have to come to.